All right, it's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans in a do-or-die game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. To avoid the sweep, you need your star players to show up, and Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum let the team down again. But I'm going to tell you why this was the most disappointing loss in the series and what it means for the Pelicans going forward. It's a live post-sweep edition of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube where I am doing this show live. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter, here with y'all after the Pelicans lose to the Oklahoma City Thunder 97-89. They are swept out of the first round and the season is over. And oh boy, was it disappointing. It was disappointing because the star players didn't step up. And I want to talk about that and look at that. I want to look at this team without Zion. Let's not forget that he didn't play a game in this series. And I was asked something that kind of brought this up, and I'll explain that in the second segment of today's show. Then we'll look at Willie Green and some of the tactics from this team and the approach that they took that ties into some of the things we saw all season long. So we got a jam-packed episode of Locked On Pelicans here. So of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want. And by the way, we are not dropping down. We're still going to be 5 days a week for the next couple of months. There's a lot of offseason talk that I'm really excited to get to. So you're going to want to subscribe. You're going to want to tell a friend about the show, and you want to become an everydayer so that you never miss an episode. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So let's get into this one here. The Pelicans lost for two reasons. And I'm going to explain why it made this even more disappointing for everything. They lost first and foremost because they didn't have Zion, right? That changes things. More on that next. They also lost because Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum just didn't show up. They didn't show up at all. You know, we're going to pick on both of them here, and I want to look at both of them. But what makes this game so disappointing is this one was winnable. This one was winnable if you get a remotely okay game from Brandon Ingram, but he was scared in this one. You get an even remotely okay game from him, you win this. The defense was really good. The Pelicans' defense in this one was the best we've seen all series. The other role players, for the most part, stepped up. Najee Marshall was basically the hero of the game. 16 points off the bench. He made 4 threes. Jose was an impactful player off the bench. He's the only Pelicans player that had a positive plus-minus on the night. Larry Nance Jr. did a good job. Jonas Valanciunas did a good job in this one. 19 points from him, 13 rebounds. He went to the line and worked and made Chet Holmgren work. Your role players and everyone else did their job and stepped up. And you need then your stars to at least do something. Brandon Ingram was 2 of 14 in this game. He had as many turnovers as made field goals. 8 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. Defensively, he was actually good. But if you have him go 7 of 14, shoot 6 of 14, you win this game. And so you do everything else right. Your role players, your star don't win the games for you. This is something we talked about a lot during the regular season. This won't work in the playoffs. Your starters have to do it. And this was an issue going into the playoffs. It was an issue all season long. It was the bench that gave them a lot of these leads. So this shouldn't surprise us, but your bench did its job in this game. You need your stars to do something, and they didn't deliver. Multiple times, Brandon Ingram could have attacked the basket. They were giving him the baseline, and he just decided not to. He played scared on offense in a way that we have never seen from him before. And then CJ McCollum couldn't hit anything this whole series, shooting under 30% from 3. At least in this one, he tried to attack the basket in other ways. But the problem is he hasn't given you offense and was getting picked on defensively. We'll get into kind of the decisions to play him as much as they did in lack of minutes for Jordan Hawkins and other guys. And we'll get into that in the third segment. But that's why they lost this series. Your star players are supposed to do this, and they didn't deliver, especially when you get what you need from everybody else. And you didn't get it from them. And that's what's so disappointing about this. This one was winnable. There is a difference, I think, in terms of pride from getting swept to losing in 5 games. That's what you try to do, right? And to their credit, they didn't give up in this one. They were in it, and the crowd in the Smoothie King Center was good, despite there being no reason for it to be that good. And Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, all series long couldn't carry you. It's not even just that they couldn't. Brandon Ingram didn't want to at times in this game. And that's just disappointing when you get that game from Najee, when you get a good game from Jonas Valanciunas, and he was good defensively. He was great defensively in this one. It's on them. Those are the 2 reasons they lost this series. Brandon Ingram and CJ, and then Zion not playing. Now, they were probably going to lose this series anyway, to be perfectly honest with you. But to do it in 4 games, to get swept and really not be competitive in some of them, 2 blowouts, including 1 at home, that hurts. That's disappointing. That's not what fans are in this for. And there's just no sugarcoating it, right? Like, I don't want to just scream to scream. I don't think there's kind of any point of that. Y'all can certainly let me know in the comments down below how you're feeling. Your stars have to do it. And this says a lot about who they are. And we'll look at this more in the offseason, right? Trust me, we're going to look at everything when it comes to Brandon Ingram. And I'll explain more of the offseason plans in tomorrow's show. But they're really robust. I spent today really thinking about them and what we're going to do, and I'm excited for that. And I think you're going to love a lot of the content. So we'll look at everything when it comes to Brandon Ingram. We'll look at everything when it comes to CJ McCollum. We'll look at everything when it comes to Willie Green. We'll even touch on some of that here. These guys needed to step up, and they didn't. And what's that say about them, right? Those are the questions that we're kind of left with that, in a sense, were answered. You can't rely on them in this series, in a setting like this at all. You can get some out of them during the regular season, but in postseason, which is what you're building your franchise for, they failed you here. And for guys that are getting paid that much money, that's not okay. And that's not something that fans should feel good about. And that's why, I talked about it in yesterday's show. I talked about it actually on the radio a bunch today too. You've got to look at the season as an 82-game season, not just this 4 games against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we'll do that here on Locked On Pelicans. We won't kind of be prisoners of the moment and overreact to this. But and we'll talk more about this actually in the next segment too. This leaves just such a bad taste in your mouth that it almost overshadows that they, had 49 wins, which is a very good number. Now, 49 wins doesn't matter if you get swept in the first round, certainly. But, bad. It's another way to put it. No other way to put it here. But we're going to be covering it all here. Everything you want to know about this series. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, too. Maybe have a guest or 2 on this week as well as we kind of make sense of what we just saw. But really, the biggest part of this here was your stars didn't deliver. Simple as that. Let's put some perspective on it though, because Zion not playing is something that I think kind of gets forgotten a little bit here, and it's kind of important, right? Let's look at that and what that could have meant to this series, how that maybe changes things. That's coming up here next in a live post-sweep edition of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DoorDash. It's Mother's Day coming up. Get something thoughtful for your mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. It's never too late to show your mom your love on Mother's Day, and you can make it even easier with DoorDash. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. And you can choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive at her door with DoorDash. You can take care of this today and be set for Mother's Day. So get all of your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by the Nola Star Bar. I want you to come to Nola Star Bar. We invite you there. It's right down the street from the Smoothie King Center. So for next season, during the playoffs, go there for your post-game libations or while you're watching the game. They're going to have every Pelicans game on next season, home and away. They also have the NBA playoffs there. Catch the finals there. There's a pool table, video poker, an internet jukebox, and karaoke every Wednesday night at the Nola Star Bar. And they also feature over 100 worldwide spirits and a hefty selection of local beers. A true Pelicans fans bar. They even created and produced the Pelicans anthem called Fly Pelicans Fly, complete with a music video. So join your fellow Pelicans fans at the Nola Star Bar at 212 Loyola Avenue, open 7 days a week, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. And check out their Pelicans anthem on the Nola Star Bar page on YouTube as well. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. No one covers the team like we do here. And trust me, I've got a great plan for the offseason. So we are still going to be 5 days a week. We'll make sense a little bit more of this series, do some film rewatches, kind of get into some more of the coaching, the players, all of that. We'll look at this season, and then we're going to focus on the offseason. What changes are going to be coming? Is it a Brandon Ingram trade? Is it looking for a new center? Does it have something to do with Zion? Right? Or are they just going to run it back? Because, by the way, they might. We'll look at all of that here. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Now for your second listen today, go check out Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. He was literally just on Saints.com working with them to break down the draft. There's no one better to do all of this than Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. Make that your second listen today. So if you look at the guys that played in this game, in this series for the New Orleans Pelicans, there's a name that's missing. I'm going to pause for dramatic effect, but you know who this is. Who's missing for the New Orleans Pelicans? Who is the only inactive player in this game for New Orleans? It's Zion Williamson. Let's keep that in mind, right? Let's keep that in mind here a little bit. Was this series disappointing? Yeah, absolutely, right? Like there's no way of getting around that. But they're missing their best player. They're missing Zion Williamson. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis, without Damian Lillard. You know, they are struggling and they're going to lose to a lower seed. New Orleans would have not been favored in any game in this series, even with Zion Williamson, and being without him certainly had them at a disadvantage. They were heavy underdogs in every single game. Game 1 was 8.5 points per FanDuel. Game 2 was 7.5. They were 5-point underdogs at home in both of these two home games, right? No one expected them to win. This was the 8 seed going up against the #1 seed. And by the way, a 1 seed that we absolutely, myself included, underrated. This Thunder team is good and you can see it. Their defense is really good. Their offense is really good as well. You know, they had the 4th best defense, the 3rd best offense, the 2nd best net rating. They're a very complete team and you can see it in there. But Zion Williamson would have made this different. Would they have won in the series? Probably. Would they have swept the New Orleans Pelicans? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So keep that in mind, right? This comes down to expectations, let's say. I see a lot of people kind of up in arms, and I get it. A sweep is embarrassing. The pride is hurt. The team should feel bad about this, right? But the problem is you're missing Zion Williamson. That completely changes this series. Does that mean they should run it back? Absolutely not. There's going to be changes going into next season. We will look at that and talk about that. And trust me, got the inside scoop on a lot of that too. But Zion Williamson would have changed this series. Again, it doesn't make them contenders. We saw that even though they got to 49 wins with Zion healthy, with Brandon Ingram healthy, they really struggled against a lot of these top teams in the NBA, unable to win consistently. And that says something, right? when you couldn't beat a lot of these top teams in the NBA, that says something. You couldn't beat the Thunder when you had everybody healthy, right? In the regular season, that was a problem. You struggled against teams like the Nuggets. You struggled against teams like the Celtics and some of these other teams in the league. The Bucks as well, even though you got to win over them. Struggled with Cleveland and some of these others. Orlando. Dallas was disappointing, right? Minnesota was about even or so. So I think there's enough data here and evidence to say there's some good things, but some things need to change. The data and the evidence on Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson is also very mixed, and we will spend an episode looking at that, I promise you. And we'll look at the offense with just Brandon Ingram and how that kind of evolved throughout the season and what they need to do with Zion Williamson as well going forward. So we're going to have everything here. But that would have changed this series, and him playing probably changes the way we view this. If they take this to 6, are people going to be saying, and let me know what you think, right? Be honest. If they get this to 6 games, are you saying they should blow it up? They need to make dramatic changes. I agree they need to make changes. We knew that going into this series. The sweep, as I talked about in yesterday's show, if you're an everydayer, doesn't necessarily change that, right? And I said, the title of the show was like, does getting swept matter? And it's like, honestly, no. If they had won tonight but then lost in game 5, your pride's a little bit better. It stings a little bit less. But there were things they needed to change. That doesn't change how we now view Brandon Ingram. And he hurt himself in terms of money and contract and just kind of prestige around the league, right? When you look at the trade value for him, when I said we'll touch on this, part of it is, They might have to run it back with him because I don't think his trade value is what y'all think it is at all. You could trade him straight up for Jared Allen, but that might be the max offer that you're going to be able to do that for right now. Now, you might be so frustrated with Brandon Ingram that you say yeah, absolutely do that. And you'd be very valid, I think, in feeling that and thinking that. But that's probably not a deal that the Pelicans front office is going to make. So you absolutely might need to re-sign him, and we'll kind of break down what that would look like probably next week at some point. But one of the good things from all of this is you see what they're missing. They're missing a backup point guard, not a starting point guard, a backup point guard. We're going to have a whole show on that. Someone to run in and play when you don't have Ingram and Zion on the court, or CJ and Zion. As long as you have Zion with one of those guys out there, you don't necessarily need another point guard. It's when you have those guys without Zion or Zion without those guys that you need it. Zion and a point guard, or BI and CJ on the court together with a point guard. It's when you don't have Zion out there or Zion with both of those guys out there or one of those guys that you need another point guard to really organize the offense. The offense is also a mess because of the players and missing Zion Williamson. They shifted their offense from whatever it was, and it was bad in the beginning of the season, to point Zion. So when Zion goes down, there's no replacing that. This is going to be a whole show because there's a lot that kind of goes on behind the scenes that I've hinted at, that I talked a little bit about in yesterday's show as well, or on Saturday's show as well. I forget when it was. And I'll explain kind of the evolution of the offense and how that can backfire on you. Should they build an offense around Zion Williamson, right? He's your best player. The way he draws a double team, we saw in this series how important it is to draw 2 defenders to the ball. 2 to the ball is something that you're going to hear. Draw 2. They couldn't do that. Zion does that with ease. But if you don't have Zion, then it looks like this. So how do you balance between point Zion, but then building an offense that works, and can those two things coexist? And I'm not sure that they can. Those are 2 very different things, and the Pelicans really struggled with that this year. It's one of the reasons why it's tough to build around a star player like Zion Williamson, who has been injured this season. Or not this season, because he wasn't. His career. And that's why they didn't do that to start the year. There's a reason they didn't start with point Zion at the beginning of the year. And then they realized that, okay, he's reliable. And then they gave him the ball, and you saw the team kind of take off. But there was also some good and bad with him and BI together. There was some, with all that. And we're going to look at all of this here. So that's what we're going to get into a lot in the offseason. I really want to get into a lot of the offensive stuff with y'all. And oh boy, we got a lot to talk about this season. We're not going to do a bonus part tonight, but maybe we'll do another live show soon and then go a little bit longer in that. Maybe we can even do that tomorrow. There's some potential for that too. So I think maybe we do that. So I see a lot of y'all in the comments talking about head coach Willie Green. Let's shift gears to that. That's coming up here next. Willie Green looking at the tactics and a couple of other things. Let's get into that coming up here next in a bonus, not a bonus episode, a live post-playoff, post-sweep episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers, get this, got $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. If you had taken the Pels plus 5.5 in this game, you would have lost, but it wouldn't have mattered because you still would have gotten $150. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. It's $150 win or lose. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this team. And like I said, season might be over, but we're going strong here at Locked On Pelicans, where I have a lot of great offseason content planned. You want trade talk? We got it. Free agency? Yeah. Changes to the coaching staff? Yep. Kind of direction going forward. Lessons to be learned. We're going to have it all here. I'm really excited to get into a lot of the just off-season talk. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's always interesting things around this team, and I just like talking basketball. And look, I appreciate how many of y'all are hanging with me here late on a Monday night after the Pelicans season ends in very disappointing fashion. I just want to say I appreciate y'all being with me all season long. We're the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason, and that reason is because of y'all. It's you, right? I do this for you, and y'all make it really fun. We should all be really upset, really beat, kind of downtrodden after this. I'm fired up because I'm here with all of you. And that's what makes this so much fun, the community and all of that. So I really appreciate you rocking with Locked On Pelicans all season long. And we're not slowing down anytime soon. So let's look at Willie Green in this series. We can kind of look at him as a whole a little bit. And trust me, there's going to be a lot on him this offseason too. Look, I don't think Willie Green's one of the worst coaches in the league. I really don't. The way I kind of view coaching is this. I think there's 5 guys. Mark Daigneault, the Thunder coach, is one of them. Spoelstra is probably one of them. Popovich is in there too. I think Malone in Denver maybe is in there. Maybe in there, but I'm not necessarily guaranteeing to put him in there. And probably Steve Kerr. Maybe it's those 5. Let's go with for right now. I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2 people here. I think 5 people help you win games. I think 5 coaches lose you games and are actively harming you. And I think there's about 20 coaches in the middle. 20 coaches in the middle. And I'll say this when we do a whole show on Willie Green, and we're going to do that, and that one will be soon. That show will be if they decide to fire him or move on from him, here is why. And that'll get into the extension stuff and why that was kind of quiet. And to be honest, I just don't put much stock into that. I don't think it truly matters either way. Telling you, not like, I don't think it really matters at all. It's kind of just how this team is. And for better or worse, we have to deal with it. Or not. Like, you don't have to, I guess, in a sense. So I think Willie Green is somewhere in that middle 20s. In the bottom of the middle 20, probably, maybe somewhere in there. But I don't think he's actively harming the team. That said, he's not helping the team. I think that's very safe to say. They've definitely done some things that are really good, right? The defense was great in this series. It's tough to be a good defensive team. They don't have guys that you normally look at and would go, they're good defenders, right? CJ was bad defensively in this, but Brandon Ingram in this game was good defensively. Trey was pretty good defensively. Herb Jones, we know, is always great, but Jonas was trying hard defensively in this game. They had the 6th best defense this year, and that says something, right? They had a decent enough offense, but that was really more kind of Zion carrying them than a cohesive unit. They had the 11th best offense this year. They had the 7th best defense. That number changed. So there's good and bad with it, right? Getting the guys to play hard. They never really looked like they gave up in this series other than maybe parts of game 3. They fought hard all year long. They've done it with a number of different guys starting with just various injuries and things. I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Does Willie Green kind of win the PR battle after games? Like, absolutely not. But I don't know if that stuff matters to the impact on the court. I think really where some of the issues are is the tactics. You know, their adjustments in this series didn't work and weren't particularly good. I was probably one of the only people that said I saw a blowout in game 2 coming. I did a whole show saying I'm worried about the defense. You saw others being like, the defense was good in game 1. It was not. Thunder just missed shots. And the Pelicans were just not contesting anything, not forcing bad shots or anything like that. You could see that coming home to hurt you in game 2, and it did. And Willie Green's adjustment to that was, we're not going to, instead of switching, we're not going to switch. And then that left wide open threes again, and they got burned. That was a bad adjustment. Things got a little bit better as the series went on, but he put you in a hole to start with some of the defensive adjustments. Offensively, you know, it was a mess all season long without Zion, and for them not to kind of have some things in place for that wasn't great. A lot of that's on the players too, and Brandon Ingram and his inability to kind of fit into what they wanted to do offensively. I talked about this on the live show on Saturday, I think. If you're an everydayer, tell me when I talked about it. And mentioned that like he didn't really want to fit in and do some of the things that he needed to do offensively. And that kind of threw a wrench into that. Is that on Willie Green? Is it not? Maybe it is. But he probably should have then benched Brandon Ingram. And he finally did it in that Lakers game in the play-in tournament. Maybe a little too late. You know, that is the type of stuff that I'm looking at that I really question here, right? You know, you played Hawkins for under 4 minutes in this game. And you could see he brought energy to the crowd. Now, the crowd isn't on the court playing, so I don't know if that matters again. But for a team that was struggling to shoot, for a team that could not make threes, they were 8 of 34. That's 23.5%. They shot poorly all series long. Maybe more Hawkins, right? Trey was 1 of 7 in this. CJ was 2 of 7 in this. I don't have the whole playoff series numbers. Let me see if I can pull it up. It wasn't great. And if those guys aren't going to shoot well, do you need to make an adjustment where they do? Where you have someone else and give it a try. And I think that was probably the move, and they did not do that. Would that have changed the series? I'm not sure. I truly don't know if that would have made a difference. But when CJ McCollum in the series here averages 24.1% from 3, that's not going to get it done. You know, when you have Trey Murphy, I probably shot a little bit better. He was 33% from deep. You know, when you have no one making their shots from 3, put in a guy that maybe can shoot threes. Like, just try it. You know, with CJ playing as many minutes as he did in this series and in each game, particularly in game 3 where he couldn't make a bucket and was getting targeted defensively, I don't know how you can keep leaving him out there before you just make some other change and see if that'll do it. I didn't think Jonas Valanciunas was really the answer. They went to him a lot in this game, and it didn't really quite work. But at a certain point, he's more reliable than anything you were getting anywhere else. So go to him more. Bench Brandon Ingram down the stretch in this game. They probably should have, and they didn't. Those are the type of things, kind of the in-game moments, that I think Willie Green does really struggle with. And I don't know if that's fireable or not. I don't think they're going to fire him. You know, I think they want to make some changes, but I think they're also going to kind of look at this team a little bit and realize the roster was flawed too. And maybe that's what they need. It was more of a roster change and give Willie Green a little bit more lead. She's going to definitely be on the hot seat going into next year. But you could see the coaching staff did no favors of Mississippi. Sorry, these are the perils of doing a live show here. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked at. Is that fireable? I don't know, and they're probably not going to fire him. I will say this, right? Even if I don't think Willie Green is one of the bottom 5 coaches, if you don't have one of those best 5 guys, should you be trying to go and get one of those 5 guys or finding the next one, right? There's something to be said for that too. So if you don't have an elite coach, should you be trying to get an elite coach? Now, that might not be, then you're cycling through coaches. That might not be the way to go either. There's a lot that goes into it. But Willie Green, well, I don't know if he was necessarily holding this team back a ton. That challenge in this game wasn't good. Challenging that offensive charge call on CJ was not something that they were going to overturn. You could see that. That wasn't going to get overturned. That was probably a bad use of the challenge that maybe you needed later. They didn't challenge certain things they probably should have. you can't take those with you. You can't take adjustments with you, right? But they probably couldn't play Hawkins many minutes in this game because, look, they didn't play him all season long. He can't improve his defense if he doesn't get minutes. And they sabotaged themselves in a way when it came to all of this. So that's something that you've got to kind of consider when you look at Willie Green. We'll spend more time really kind of examining him this year and what it could mean for the future, what this team should do. And what I'll say with this is Willie Green didn't do them very many favors in this series. I don't think he actively harmed them per se, right? Brandon Ingram not playing well, CJ McCollum struggling, no Zion at all is what cost them this series. And again, how's this? It's what cost them 1 or 2 wins in this series. I don't think they were going to win this series no matter what. So I don't want to say it would have cost them this series. It cost them not getting swept, right? Your pride stings from that. It's embarrassing. That's what it cost them. But Willie Green didn't do them any favors either. That didn't do them any favors either. And so if your head coach isn't improving you, does that mean you should make a change? Potentially, yes. We'll look at that in a show. So we got a lot to cover here. So we're going to wrap it up there. Let me know how you feel about this game in the comments down below. And I just want to say again, I really appreciate y'all. Like, I really, truly appreciate y'all. If you see me out ever, say hi. Don't be a stranger. I'm happy to talk Pels with you. Talking to a number of people here in the arena at this game was great. Some of you, I'll tell you that I thought was just super awesome. Honestly made my day. A guy came up to me and was telling me that his mom up in Shreveport is also an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans. And that's how they connect every day. It's like, did you listen to Locked On Pelicans? And Jake, what'd you think? And that's so cool to me that it's keeping like 2 people tied together, a mom and her son, through distance because of their love of this team. It's not my show that's doing it, right? It's the love of the Pelicans and the passion they have, I think, is the most wonderful thing. And I love being part of this community. I feel honored to be the host of Locked On Pelicans. I just want to thank y'all as this season ends for riding with me all season long in a weird year, a really down end. But there's going to be a lot more to come. There's going to be a lot of changes this team can do. There's a lot of really interesting things around them, and we're going to be covering it all here on Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you again so much for being with me. Down end of the season, but go Pels. We're going to have a lot of fun talking different things. We'll still do live shows during the offseason as well. I'll lay out more of the offseason plans in tomorrow's episode or in a week or so. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I appreciate y'all being here. Sorry, end of the year. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. It's been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.